Hey everyone, welcome to my first poker vlog. My name is Gage, and this is something I've been wanting to do for a while, but never really had the chance until now. Just to give a little bit of background about myself, I am 26 and currently play out of New England and play mostly at Mohegan Sun. Though I don't really have the permission to film there, so when I do get a chance to film, it's usually at home games. In today's game, we're going to be playing in an uncapped 1-3 game in Providence at a place called the Degen Den, which is run by our friend Dave. It's usually good action, good people, and a great atmosphere all in all, so I'm pretty excited to show this to you guys. With that said, let's get into the action. We buy in for 400 and play for 20 minutes before reaching our first notable hand. We are in the cutoff and open to $12 with Queen 10 of spades. The button and small blind both make the call. Flop comes pretty nice for our hand. It's 10-10-7 with 2 hearts. Small blind checks and we c-bet for 15. The button and big blind both make the call, so we are off to a turn, which is the 8 of diamonds. Small blind checks, and we decide to size up to 65, targeting their draws in pocket 9s. Button calls, and small blind gets out the way. The river comes to 6 of spades, which is a pretty bad one. We now lose to any 9. We decide to check, and our opponent bets $100, which is about half pot. Looking back at this now, I could have definitely taken some more time to think about this. I know it's a good price, but our hand was pretty much been reduced to a bluff catcher at this point, and I don't think he's betting much worse for value, nor do I think he has a ton of bluffs at this spot. That said, we do end up making the call, and sure enough, Dave shows us ace-10 for better trips. Nice hand, Dave. On to the next one. About 15 minutes later, we look down at King 7 of spades and face a $15 open from the hijack. I definitely prefer a fold here, mixing in a 3-bet once in a while, but we decide to just call. Heading to a flop heads up, which comes pretty nice. It's 8-5-4 with 2 spades, so we got ourselves a flush draw and a gut shot. Hijack throws in a relatively large c-bet of 25, and my initial plan was to throw in a semi-bluff if she bets something like 1/3 to 1/2 pot, but given that she bets so large, I decided to just call and realize our equity on future streets. The turn comes, and it doesn't disappoint. It is the 6 of clubs, improving us to the essential nuts. Even better, our opponent continues with a bet of 45. At this point, it's pretty clear that we're up against a pretty strong hand, so I want to start getting chips in the middle immediately. But I don't want to go too big, given how little we would have behind after a call. So I go pretty tiny and make it 110, leaving us about 300 back. Our opponent thinks for a minute and makes the call. Now, we're just hoping for a brick river, which is exactly what we get in the form of the Jack of Hearts. Our opponent checks, and we have no other option but to ship it for 300. Our opponent thinks for maybe 30 seconds and eventually does find the fold, which is unfortunate, but we're always happy to pick up this nice pot. We end up mixing it up with this player again about 25 minutes later when we peel ace-king of spades in the cutoff. 2 players limp, and the player to our right opens 20. We have a pretty clear 3-bet and decide to go with a sizing of 75. I would probably like to go a little larger, but I don't think it's too much of a mistake. The 2 limpers fold, and our opponent on the right makes the call. Off to a flop, and it comes 8-8-3 with 2 spades, giving us 2 overs and a flush draw. I throw in a standard 1/3 c-bet of 50, and this is where things get a little nerve-wracking. Our opponent is going to check raise us to 125. I'm not going to lie, I was a little confused by this sizing in real time, but seeing our stack depths, it does make sense that she would do this to set up a nice pot-sized turn jam. Still, I think our hand is a little too strong to fold, but I don't want to just call. I think the best move here is to re-raise, so that's what I go ahead and do. I would probably make this same move with most of my overpairs as well, so I don't think this is a huge mistake. All in. Worst case scenario occurs when our opponent snaps us off and shows King 8 of diamonds for flop trips. We are going to run it once as a 30% dog.
Everybody's picking PLOs because that's what everybody wants to play. You know?
Ace high. Ah. Nice hand.
I hate PLOs like that. I always pick hold'em.
Yeah, I was like, damn, when's the hold'em? I thought it was round for round. Nah.
That hurt, but I don't think our shove is the worst play in the world. We just happen to run into it. We're going to rebuy and keep the night going. Soon after this hand, we find ourselves in a pretty wild one. We look down at pocket 10s under the gun and raise to $12. Low jack now 3-bets us to 36. Interestingly enough, the hijack puts in the cold call. It gets back over to us, and I don't think we have any other decision here except to throw in the call as well. Going 3 ways to a flop out of position, and it comes 6-6-7 rainbow, which all things considered is pretty good for us. The low jack continues for 30, and the hijack folds. The turn is the 5 of diamonds, and we check it over to the low jack, who keeps barreling, and this time for 85. When he continues on this turn, I start feeling a little less confident in her hand, but for this price, I can't go anywhere just yet. We call and see a river which comes an absolutely beautiful 10 of diamonds. We could have just drilled a 2-outer, and now it's just a decision on what we want to do. I think checking is pretty standard and probably the right play, but we don't really want to give overpairs a chance to check back, and I think I have enough bluffs here to where a lead makes sense. So I go ahead and bet out for 225. Our opponent goes into the blender for quite some time.
I'm not folding. I'm finding. I'm thinking about some stuff.
I don't think in all my time playing poker that I've ever heard a player verbally bind themselves to a call while also contemplating a raise. It's a really crazy situation. A few more seconds go by and our opponent decides to just flick in a calling chip. We show our hand and obviously we are good and going to take down this really nice pot. About 40 minutes go by before we play our next fun hand. We see an early position open to 10 from max and decide to mix things up with a 3-bet to 30 with king 9 of diamonds. This is probably really wide, but we have been card dead for close to an hour, and I think this is a good candidate to get in the mix with. Everybody else folds, and Max makes the call. Heads up to a flop, which comes ace-9 deuce with 2 clubs. Max checks, and we see bet for 25. Our opponent doesn't think too long before making the call. Turn comes the 6 of clubs, completing the flush, and Max checks again. At this point, it probably makes the most sense to check back. However, I don't think we are good here too often, so I decide I'm going to bet small on this turn to see what our opponent does. Basically, if we bet small and he raises, we could just let our hand go. But if he just calls, then there are a lot of rivers that I can probably lay down the hammer and get folds from a lot of his single and 2 pair hands. So we're going to go for a sizing of about half pot, which is $55, and our opponent makes the call. Now, remember when I said that I was going to go for a pretty large sizing on this river to generate folds? Well, that all changes when the river comes in offsuit king. Now I'm thinking about the best sizing to use to get value from hands like ace-x or maybe king-x with a club. After a little bit of thought, we opt for a sizing of $80. Our opponent thinks for a few seconds and then makes the call. We show our hand and we're good. This brings us to our most interesting hand of the evening, and I'm just going to preface this by saying, Mom, if you're watching this, I'm really sorry for what you're about to see. Early position in the low jack limp, and the button makes it 20. We look down at 7-deuce of clubs in the small blind and decide to bump things up to 95. The 7-deuce game is on, so taking down this pot means receiving an extra 90 from the table. I think overall the button's going to be very wide here, so I'm relatively confident that our 3-bet will get through some portion of the time. This just isn't one of those times. The button's going to make the call, and we are heads up to a flop with about 200 in the middle. The flop comes rather abysmal. It is Jack 10-9 with 2 diamonds. On this board especially, I'm going to be checking range out of position, so that's what I do, and the button fires out for 75. A normal person would just snap fold here and look for a better spot later on, but I'm not normal. Instead, we're going to put in a check raise at 200. I'd be doing this with very nutted hands like king queen, jacks, 10s, jack 10. The only problem is that she can also have a ton of those hands as well. But she can also have hands like top pair, pair plus straight draw, flush draws, you get the picture. After about 15 seconds, the button is going to make the call and we are off to a turn with about 600 in the middle, which comes an innocuous 5 of clubs. At this point, I decide to check, but then our opponent snap checks back, so this hand is really off the rails already. In real time, I figured if she had a nutted hand, she would have thought about betting. So when she does this, I think she's relegated to ace-jack at best here, but can have a ton of those draws that I mentioned before. So when the river comes to 3 of clubs, nothing's really changed. We still have 7 high, and we don't think our opponent is all that strong either. With this in mind, there's only one move to make.
All in.
I agree. All the time. You gotta be really good.
1 minute later.
You have the hand. I think you have your insane.
Well, he's gonna have the biggest stack. He's got 700.
What do you think I have?
No, that's 700 is the big stack.
The hand that I'm beating.
We are going to suffer through a 6-minute tank, which is probably one of the most grueling things I've ever dealt with. It actually got to a point where, in an effort to make myself more comfortable, I just started internally telling myself that I wanted her to call. Eventually, though, she does come to a decision.
Whether it's half or full. Yeah. It's just to slow you down, like bring your tempo down. Call.
This was honestly one of the sickest bluff attempts I've ever made, and I'm really happy we got it on video. I'm gonna cherish this one for a while.
$200 left that call, I swear to God. From the beginning, he knew exactly what hand I saw. He even said that's crazy.
After that hand, our stack has now climbed up to just under 1400, but we're not done yet. In this next hand, under the gun straddles a 6, and our opponent in early position makes it 25. Just to set the stage for this one, Max, who is normally sitting in this seat, got up for a minute, so he let Dave play his stack for him. We look down at ace king off in the hijack and bump things up to $80. Things get even crazier though when Dave now 4-bets us to 200. At this point, I think I really just want to fold. These ranges are going to be pretty tight, and I don't think Dave is the type to necessarily get out of line all that often, especially considering he's playing somebody else's stack. But still, I think ace-king is at least a call here, so that's what we do. At this point, Max has decided to rejoin us for a flop, so we're heads up to a flop with about 400 in the middle, playing against a tag team, and it comes 10-8-4 with 2 hearts. Max now throws out a small c-bet of 120. Holding the ace of hearts, facing a standard small sizing, we're just going to continue and see what develops. Turn is a blank, and our opponent checks. I don't see any sense in betting here, so we go ahead and check back. River is another blank, and our opponent now takes a stack of greens and throws it in the middle. I think the way this hand played out, our opponent is weighted more towards hands like jacks and queens than a hand like aces, kings, or ace-king. So with that in mind, we're just going to let our cards go. Our opponent does tell us later that he had queen-queen. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how we played the hand. An uneventful hour passes by when we get our next notable hand. Under the gun straddles, and +1 opens at 25. We are in the low jack and peeled a beautiful pocket aces and bump things up to 110. Things get even better when our opponent on the button now 4-bets us to 305. Everyone else gets out of the way. This is insanely strong from our opponent, and given the fact that we would be heading to a flop with not a lot behind, I think there's only one move to make.
All in.
Such a good line.
I got aces. You want to go twice?
After a couple seconds, our opponent makes the call, and we're going to run it once, not really sure what we need to fade.
Yeah, I did.
I saw you showing the 7 and 2 the other time.
I had 7-deuce. It's gonna be 7-deuce. It's not real. King!
We're going to win this massive $2,200 pot, getting a full double up. It's always nice when you get aces in pre-flop and they hold. In our last somewhat notable hand, we're going to be playing in a limp pot in the small blind with ace-8 offsuit and see a flop 3 ways of 9-9 deuce rainbow. Action checks around, and we're going to see the ace of clubs hit the turn, giving us top pair. Hayden, also known as Dookie bets, wagers 15. +2 calls, and we make the call as well. River comes an interesting one. It's another 9, giving us a full house and a chop with any ace. I'm feeling pretty good about this one until Dookie decides to bet more than 3x the pot with a bet of 200. +2 player makes a reluctant fold, making me think he had an ace as well. Honestly, if I could take back any hand from this night, I think it would have been this one, and this is even taking into account our first hand where we called with queen 10 on the river. Yes, he could have some ace-x that wants to get players off a chop. However, this is a limp pot, and we think the other player folded an ace, so we can essentially remove a ton of ace-x from his likely holdings. I don't know, like I said, I think I could have thought about this one a little bit more. We end up making the call, and sure enough, he's going to show us 9-5 offsuit for quads. Nice hand, you son of a...
All in all, pretty good session. Didn't start off on the best foot, but we pulled through. Found a pretty big bluff with 7-deuce. Got it all in with aces and held. I think it was pretty good. It was a bigger game than I normally play, but I think we held our own. That's all. Thank you all for joining in, and see you next time.